Welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast. Hey guys, welcome to yet another episode of the Higher Line podcast. Super excited about this one because this guy came in via Texas, but then before that, South Korea. This is Mr. John Frankl. My coach, Dan Hart, says you're a million stripe black belt.
5.
That one side of the belt like hangs with all the stripes.
Because you get 2 on each end, so it looks like 7, but it's 5.
You're the director of SBG Korea.
Correct.
But also continentally, you're
Asia. But I'm based in Korea, yes.
So you're like the Genghis Khan of Jiu-Jitsu.
Something like that, minus all the wives.
How the hell does a guy from Northern California end up going to Korea and becoming the director of an art that they never had there?
Yes, series of coincidences, not really accidents, but I took Korean as a foreign language requirement in college.
Where were you?
Berkeley.
Okay.
Never had any intention to take it beyond the 1 year required for graduating.
Going back in time real quick, when you were in Berkeley, and we'll get to all the details, did you ever think you'd be sitting in the podcast room 30 years later of a guy that's invested his whole life in firearms?
No.
Okay.
I didn't even think about podcasts. They didn't exist.
They didn't exist back then. It was AM radio.
Oh,
and
yeah. Cassette tapes.
Yeah, cassette tapes. They didn't have cassette tapes. When you were in... I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
Keep going.
I'm older.
Airships.
Yes. So I took it for a year. Didn't think I was going to continue. Liked it enough to take it for 1 more year.
What were you studying?
English literature.
English literature.
Yeah. And I couldn't get any of my English classes because at that time, it's probably the same now, Berkeley was way overcrowded, way understaffed, and there were all of these seniors and juniors.
Was this like 1990, 89?
85 to 89.
Okay.
I was there.
Okay.
Flunking out of harder things like pre-med and engineering and stuff, and then becoming English majors, and then they had priority. If you're senior, you get first choice, then junior, then sophomore. So all of my sophomore classes were being taken by seniors, and I couldn't get them. And then I had the next year there was going to be the opportunity to do a year abroad in Korea for the first time ever. And I thought, oh, that would be cool, so go abroad. And by the time I decided to spend 25% of my college in Korea, I thought being an English major was kind of ridiculous, and I changed my major. But I still thought I was going to law school. I never expected to move to Korea.
So you wanted to be a lawyer?
Yeah.
Is that what your dad did?
No, just vaguely though. I mean, as much as you know what you want to do when you're 18
Earn a
or
good
19.
living,
yeah,
it seemed prestigious.
Yeah, exactly.
Noteworthy.
Yeah. All of my lawyer friends now are jealous of me and say you made the right choice.
Miserable.
They have a lot of money that they can't spend. Their wives spend it. They're working.
And they're off grinding it out.
Yeah.
You're traveling around, going to chocolate shops.
Pretty much getting boutique coffees and doing jiu-jitsu.
Bougie. So you, before all of that, like if you look up your bio online, you studied martial arts from the age of like 6, right?
Yeah.
Did some karate.
Yeah, I lived in a small town, so I did what was available back then. I mean, it was hard to find anything.
Yeah. And that was all the cool stuff then too.
Yeah.
I did taekwondo as a young man.
Yep.
That was the coolest thing in the world too.
Yeah, kicking people in the head.
Yeah.
So I liked martial arts, and I had been doing them. And for me, there's also the draw of the sports that all your friends are playing, football and baseball and basketball. So you train for martial arts, and then it's some other season, and you train, and it's some other season. So I wasn't really consistent until college.
Okay.
I was just too small to play any sports in college.
Oh, I thought that you did water polo.
In high school, I was very good. I went, and then I was...
And swimming.
Yep. Did swimming and water polo. I was pretty good at the local level, and I thought I was going to walk on at Berkeley. I didn't think I was going to start, but I was good in Santa Cruz. I'll walk on and be on the B team. And I walked in, I'm like, oh, basketball team. Where's the water polo team? And they're like, we're the water polo team.
Oh, wow.
They're like all like 6'8". And I was like, maybe I'll just study and you guys play water polo. and then it was a time to be more serious about martial arts, right?
So what did you get yourself into then martial arts wise in those years?
So Kuksulwan, Kuksulwan.
Tell folks about that.
It's if you know Hapkido, it's a Korean martial art. I mean, as much as anything's a Korean martial art. A lot of Japanese influence there and a lot of Chinese influence there. But it's a martial art that was a modern martial art that was formed in Korea. And because it's, the Korean people are doing it, so there's a certain amount of Korean DNA there. But a lot of this, like the self-defense techniques, are very clearly coming from Japanese traditional jiu-jitsu. A lot of the forms, are coming from Chinese kung fu. I mean, you can just see exactly where they're coming
from. The movements and patterns.
Yes.
Did any of that influence your desire with Korean?
Yeah, of course.
With the literature?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was. Those are tied pretty closely.
And you've got a second degree black belt in that art, is that correct?
Yeah.
Do you even know anymore?
No.
Oh.
Some people, when they hit jiu-jitsu, they're like, I wasted, 15 years doing this. I never felt it was a waste. I mean, because for fighting, it's more or less useless. But
can you say that to that camera, please?
For fighting, it's more or less useless.
What's more or less useless?
Hapkido, Kuksuwan, those things, yeah.
You said it.
Yeah, I said it. And I did it religiously for over a decade, so I'm not talking about it from the outside.
And that's the interesting thing, because you hear people say that, and all the guys like that Paul's introduced me to, Cecil and Larry, all those dudes all trained the Eastern arts beforehand. And that's like you said, that's all that there was.
Yeah, that's all that there was. And so I'll say two positive things. No, one positive thing, one kind of neutral thing. The positive thing is I never think that I wasted my time the way some people do, because for martial arts, there was a lot of it did help with sort of mobility, flexibility, coordination, balance,
body awareness,
all that. So it was like
general
physical
fitness.
education. Yeah, GPP.
Wouldn't it also, like, I remember the Hardy Boys?
Yes.
You're a literature guy. So Hardy Boys, American literature. I always loved as a kid reading those, and the boys studied judo, remember? Mr. Hardy, I think, brought judo back from World War II. And so, like, they'd always toss one of the bad guys, and like as a kid, you're like, oh, that's so cool. Nobody knew judo then. So like a guy knows a couple of hip throws and all of a sudden you're a badass.
You're pretty deadly,
Yeah, so if you knew some good striking techniques and nobody else did, it made you better than average shithead on the street.
This is true. It was a different era. You weren't going to run into someone who had been training MMA for 17 years.
That's the part that I think people forget, like all in this, and I'm not telling this to you, but you guys listening, now people modern day, like in my world shooting, people look at pictures of how folks held a gun and they're like, oh, they were so stupid. That was what was known at the time. And like I knew kung fu guys that say, I used to beat ass, and it's like, yeah, you used to. And it's not an insult, but
it's evolution.
Yeah, just to drive the point home to folks, when they got in some scrap in a parking lot, either that dude knew how to wrestle from high school, or he had some boxing skills that his pop taught him in the garage, or an Eastern martial art, or it was just whatever God gave him in his anger.
Yeah. So, but the reason I was, the connection between jiu-jitsu, and I'll talk about, the jiu-jitsu I started with versus some of the jiu-jitsu now, the connection between jiu-jitsu and what I did before was that the attraction to me was that the advertising, the Black Belt magazine articles and the Inside Kung Fu articles about this particular art basically presented it as MMA plus weapons. It's like, we do kicking, punching, standing grappling, ground grappling, and we teach weapons. So to me, I was like, yeah, of course, that's what I want to do. That's everything. Yeah.
I'll be deadly from any position.
In reality, it's the individual techniques are there, more or less, but the training methods don't make them functional.
Was this the early 90s?
This would have been 85 through probably mid-90s.
Okay.
Yeah, late 90s. Yeah.
When did you start? What was your first exposure to jiu-jitsu as you know it now?
So, a friend who had also been doing Korean martial arts, he was a Japanese American from Hawaii. And he was living in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we knew each other, through the local martial arts scene, and he moved back. He was a little bit older than he's still around. He's a little older now. He was studying law at UC San Francisco. And he moved back, and I was in Korea for that year abroad. And at the time, you could stop in Hawaii on the way back to California for $50. And he's like, just stop in Hawaii, man. You're coming back from Korea. I'd been in Korea for a year. Okay. So I stopped, and he was like a second year practicing lawyer. And he, at the time, there was 2 jiu-jitsu schools in America. It was Horin in LA and Helson in Hawaii. So he wound up learning from Helson. He'd been learning, I'd have to reconfirm with him, but 3 to 6 months, very much like a beginning white belt. And he's like, I'm doing jiu-jitsu. And I'm like, whatever. I just lived in Korea a year, and I know what jiu-jitsu is, and it's nothing special. And he's like, no, it's not that kind of jiu-jitsu. It's Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It sounded even worse.
Right.
Like, it's supposed to be Japanese, right?
What kind of hokey garbage did this guy sell you?
Right. And so he did just what Horian always does in the first trial lesson. He's okay, lay down, I'm going to mount you. Get out. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to get out. I knew all my techniques to get out, and this and that didn't work. Of course, a few minutes later, I'm exhausted, tap and say, okay, tell me more. And I knew that was 1989, would have been June of 89. And I'm like, this is what I want to learn. But I went back to Korea to do a master's degree, so I couldn't learn it directly. I was watching all the tapes and stuff. Horian, his first tapes are okay, like just for self-study, especially if you'd already been doing other martial arts for a decade. So I was just getting a bunch of guys together and doing like self-study. But then the moment I finished, I moved back, stayed in Santa Cruz for maybe 2 weeks just to see family, and packed up and moved to LA and started training at Rickson's.
And you did that till?
I did that a year, 94 to 95.
He awarded you a blue belt?
Yep. And I moved to Boston for school in 95, and then started training with Roberto Maya there through, purple, brown, black.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, again, I can parallel it to the art that I practice, the gun, which I've spent most of my life doing. And people now, especially young guys that like didn't have to like look at books and pictures to like Black Belt magazine like you're talking about. And it's not a dig, it's just a good observation. I don't think they appreciate, like you talking about putting a VHS tape in with your buddies, because I can imagine you doing it, being like, all right, what did he do? How do you, and then trying to do it on the floor in your sweatpants and t-shirts, probably.
Wrestling shoes.
Messing around and then rewinding and trying it again. I can just imagine. And now there's 50 million jiu-jitsu academies, and even the ones that suck, there's still somebody there that can show you something far better than a VHS tape.
100%.
Yeah, we're lucky.
Yeah. The only exception is that Horian is a very good teacher, and he gets criticized for volume, like not giving enough quantity. But the quality was very high. And of course, he's a businessman, and he had an interest in letting out that information at a certain pace. But I also think, and the more I do jiu-jitsu and the more I understand jiu-jitsu, the more I think he was right. It wasn't purely or even primarily greed-based. It was philosophical. Like you can give too much information and just drown people, and they're going to suck at 100 things instead of being good at 10 things. And I think he really did have a structure.
He understood that.
And he still does. I mean, even the people who go to the Gracie Academy now, it's a little different with his sons running it. But there's still a very conscious progression, which isn't just like, we're going to show you everything and you're going to think we're cool, but you're not going to be very good at it, which a lot of schools do. And they'll produce, they'll produce like some small percentage, 3 to 7, I don't know, % of the guys are just natural athletes. They see it, they do it. The other 90-some% are no good. Whereas I think the way like Henry, Rickson, Horian are teaching, they're not necessarily catering to like trying to make those 3% their billboard. Like, look, my world champion, I coach a world champion. Well, all their other guys aren't very good. They're actually trying to bring the level of all their students up at a certain rational speed, so everyone's really solid. Gi, no gi, against strikes, not against strikes, whereas the other ones are kind of very specialized and trying to produce results as quickly as possible. And maybe, like a boxing gym. Think of a boxing gym. If they create one champion and he gets $250 million, whatever they get, 25 million or something, whatever 10% or whatever their cut is, probably more. So that it's in their interest to produce that one guy. Everyone else is just kind of keeping the lights on.
That guy now brings in more people to keep the lights on.
But they're all just keeping the lights on. They don't really get much attention. Whereas I think what Horian and Henry, Rickson, that side does is like, no, you can be a housewife and you can be a world champion and you can be a whatever high school student, and we're going to bring you up and really make sure that you understand jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm. How long, you were with Rickson's Academy for like a year?
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that a little bit. So like Henry is my coach, Dan's coach, and a friend of ours. He's been on the podcast a couple times. Like, talk about your experience there. He just released a new book.
Yeah. So
have you read it?
No.
Will you read it?
Yes, 100%. 100%. I'm going back to Korea soon at the end of the month, and I already have way too much stuff. So books are heavy. I'm just going to order it once I'm there. Yeah, so I'm with SBG. Henry recently joined SBG. Matt and I both got our blue belts. I mean, Henry too, but Matt and I both got our blue belts from Rickson around the same time. Had to leave. Henry stayed there.
I forgot Matt Thornton got up.
Yep. Blue belts. I forgot. So there's a lot of Rickson DNA inside SBG. Yeah, a lot of it. But yeah, that first year, I'm really grateful because Roberto's, the guy who gave me my black belt, he gives me my stripes. I love him. He's a great instructor. But he came out of Gracie Baja. He's a cousin of Renzo Gracie. He's a cousin of the Machados. Their moms are all sisters. And they grew up in an environment that was trending towards the modern. I mean, Gracie Baja is the school of Carlos Gracie Jr. IBJJF is the corporation of Carlos Gracie Jr. So Gracie Baja had a kind of interest in pushing jiu-jitsu towards what eventually became the IBJJF and their rule set, which isn't quite as solid in terms of jiu-jitsu as a martial art. Mm-hmm. It's
the difference between sport and
that's not a value judgment. As long as you understand what you're choosing, it's not like one's better.
It's for a different result, correct. A different desired end state.
Yeah, and so I started in the summer, and we didn't put on a gi until September. Like Luis, he was a brown belt at the time. He's in Maui now, probably like 6 or 7 degree black belt. He was basically running the gym because Rickson was still a professional athlete when I was there. I'd see him like twice a week. He'd come in, ride his bike, and he was doing his own training. He'd ride his bike however many miles to get there, and then he'd roll with some guys. Or if he got there really early, he'd teach class. If he didn't, he would just let Luis teach class, but he'd maybe walk around and give pointers. But I'm sure he was there times when I wasn't there, but I was lucky to see him twice a week. But yeah, Luis just came up one day. He's like, okay, yeah, it's like weather's cooling down. You're gonna have to get a gi. There was no jiu-jitsu gi at the time. You're gonna have to get a judo gi. So, okay, I've got a judo gi. The first few months, it was all no gi. And the positions, like I remember guard, top. I mean, someone's closed guard, and when they taught posture, proper posture, it wasn't like, they're gonna grab your collar and pull you down. It's like, can they punch you in the face from here? Mm-hmm. Funnily enough, it's the same posture, which keeps you, from being pulled down by the collar and punched in the face. So
right, back.
Yeah, just hips low, spine erect, not looking down at the person. So yeah, it was fun. And then
that's an interesting point. I want to jump in. That is, I keep paralleling to the shooting stuff because it's what I've just invested so much time in. And when I talk about this with people, it's somebody partially understands a thing, and then that thing takes on new life for something it maybe wasn't meant for.
Right.
And like posture, this is great. You can't get broken down, and it's completely forgotten that that's a byproduct of not getting punched in the face. It's not just to not get broken down. It's you're not going to get punched in the face, and that's just like, well, we don't hit each other, so that doesn't matter. Yeah. And then people get lazy and come forward and forget that they can get their nose smashed.
Yes. And the points too. I mean, the jiu-jitsu people will know this, but if you don't know jiu-jitsu, one interesting thing about sports jiu-jitsu is, so you get 4 points for back mount, you get 4 points for mount, you get 3 points for passing the guard, 2 for sweeps, 2 for knee on belly, 2 for takedowns. And people might have philosophical differences about it, but basically back in 1967 when this point system was created, it was what are the best positions offensively and the worst positions defensively in a fight. Mounted, great. Okay, you get 4 points for that, right? It's dominant. Back mount, dominant, 4 points. Passing someone's guard is like getting from where they can kick you, choke you, triangle you to where you're on their side, pinning them. Okay, 3 points. And then 2 just to put them on their back, which is interesting, right? Because wrestling, you pin someone, you win. judo, you throw someone to their shoulders, you win. And jiu-jitsu, it's like, no, that's 2 points, that's good, but the fight just started. You know,
Right.
you're in a better position, but the fight just started.
Right. And we talk about seeing different people. You can tell if that person's training for violence or not. I can't ever ascertain what not is because I don't know and I don't care, but you can tell that person has no idea that they can be punched, kicked, bit, head-butted, or they just don't care because they just don't think about it.
It's if jiu-jitsu is not a martial art for you.
Yeah.
Like no
I think
no
about
one's
when
thinking
I can put my thumb on your eye.
No one playing baseball. Most people playing baseball aren't worried about if they can hit you in the head with a bat or throw the ball and crack your eye socket.
Sure.
They're just playing a game.
Right. Good point.
Could be a martial art. Take the bat. It's a pretty good martial art. But yeah, a lot of guys playing jiu-jitsu now, it's just like baseball. Like, well, what are you talking about? Like, we don't do that. I just try to sweep you. And, you know, I won't say his name, but there's a really, really famous competitor who did a DVD series with one of my buddies. And they went through like takedowns, a guard pass, controlling this
You can look all this up apparently because he gave you enough details to do
controlling this position, controlling that position, and then the final DVD. My buddy's like, "Oh, this is great material. We want to do a final DVD on submissions." And he's like, "I don't really know any submissions." He's like, I just don't work on submissions."
Get you halfway there.
What do you mean? Well, no, I mean, like, by the time he gets his takedown guard pass, it's like, well, you know, I got my 5 points. Just gonna pin you,
ride you out till the clock's up.
Yeah, so it's just different mindset.
So in the analogy is now you're whistling in the street for the police, and hopefully them or some other friend comes and bails you out. Otherwise, you just lay there till morning, holding the guy down, see who goes to sleep first. That's funny. And that's the interesting thing about like the evolution of martial arts. People do stuff for all different reasons, but like I always ask my students, why are you here? What's your goal?
Sure.
And like if it's not to win in violence, then like I'm not your guy. Not like I'm the end all be all for that, but like that's where this material takes us to like doing violent things or sprinting and running away if I need to.
Yeah.
But I guess in the context of what we're talking about, it's hands-on.
Yeah.
You can't run off the mat.
Yeah, I mean, teaching jiu-jitsu, like two things. Like the other thing that was kind of put into me really in the beginning of Rickson's was white to blue belt is for fighting. And Luis was like, if you get a blue belt here, you can fight. Maybe not beat a D1 wrestler or like Olympic judoka if you're just like a guy who's doing jiu-jitsu 3 days a week. But, you know, anyone who's not like high level grappler or maybe a pro kickboxer or something, so you're going to beat him in a fight if you get a blue belt.
Do you think that still holds true? Or was that just, because I used to hear that for years, but do you think that still holds true?
Not at most schools.
No,
not at most schools. I mean,
why?
It's sort of veered towards sport. Yeah.
Do you think, and I don't want to talk out of turn, but do you also think perhaps it's the business of running gyms?
Partially, but you know, the thing is, I think about this a lot. It's a great question. The thing is, when people come in off the street, they're mostly looking for health and self-defense. Like nobody really knows the difference between jiu-jitsu and judo and kung fu and karate.
You mean like when a person just walks in and says...
You're talking about a commercially viable school. Like if you think it's business that's driving jiu-jitsu towards sport, that's a hard one. And I can't give a definitive answer, but my sense is that in any given school, and some school, there are artificially lopsided schools. Like the Mendez brothers are so good and so famous that people move from New Jersey to relocate in Costa Mesa so their kids can train with the Mendez brothers. That's not an organic school. That's that's like the Russian guys down in Texas running gymnastics factories, and people move down there and have their
kids be with the best of
kids
the
in
best.
Boarding schools or whatever from the time they're 5 to do gymnastics. But if you're talking about like a local economy, right? I'm going to open a school in this city and I want it to be commercially viable. I think, 5% of your guys are going to, maybe 10% of your guys and women are really going to be into like, I'm competing all the time, I'm traveling, I'm dieting, I'm lifting weights, I want to be a world champion. The rest is like health, self-defense, community, you know? So I think, what SBG does, what the Gracie Academy does, it's every bit as commercially viable. I don't think you have to veer too hard towards sport, and especially not, I want to use my words carefully here. I don't want to say like distort your curriculum, but shrink your curriculum, maybe like reduce your curriculum, and just eliminate the idea of defending against strikes and eliminate the idea of all these situations. No, or eliminate, not having a gi to grab.
Is it because of time?
I don't think so.
No?
No. Because the gi, gi jiu-jitsu itself is applicable to anyone wearing clothing. So it's not like the gi no gi divide is kind of artificial.
Doesn't it also simulate strikes too? The ability to...
If you can touch my collar, you can touch my face. Yeah, of course.
Not simulate them, but create
the
that.
Distance. Yeah. But what I think the better schools do, not better, the schools I like to...
What he meant is better.
...train at do, and I tell my guys all the time, it's like, no one has to lose teeth. Like, it's one thing if you want to...
Because God made mouth guards. Yeah.
It's one thing if you want to be a pro MMA fighter. But if you want to be a jiu-jitsu guy who can deal with punches and kicks, not a pro MMA fighter, there's no pure styles in pro MMA anymore. If you started in wrestling, you better know some jiu-jitsu and some kickboxing. If you started in jiu-jitsu, you better learn some wrestling and some kickboxing. Everyone's doing 3+ things if they're going to be viable in MMA. But if you're talking about jiu-jitsu for defense against people who are trying to hit and kick you, who aren't professional MMA athletes, all you need to do is, I put on a mouthpiece, you put on a mouthpiece. Put on little gloves, the lightest ones possible, so you can still grab. And I pull some crazy thing like deep half guard, and my head is right under you. You don't have to, break my orbital bone or knock my teeth out. You do this.
Just to let you know.
You touch with your glove, you go bonk, bonk on the forehead, and I'm like, whoa, let me put knee shield half guard. Just a reminder.
We do it every Sunday.
Yeah, once a week. And
every Sunday we do it for 1 hour.
I think the Gracie Academy may go like twice a week.
Yeah.
I say once to twice a week, just so you just keep it in your mind, like what ranges are actually viable in a fight and which are more like, okay, now we're just playing jiu-jitsu. Because the other thing is, Rickson was not anti-sport jiu-jitsu. He said after blue belt, you're basic. He's like, if you just want to fight, like if you're a good blue belt, like you can pretty much take care of yourself. Purple, brown, black is jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu, and you're enjoying the game, and you don't want to, like, because other people are so easy. Just take them down, mount them, they turn their back, you choke them out.
Non-jiu-jitsu practitioners.
Yeah, so easy. You actually want more challenges, and so now it's like, what I know, and now we're...
Train drunk.
Or that.
That can help you. If you show up drunk, it makes it... I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So what parameters or metrics did Rickson have for his blue belts at that time? Do you remember? What did you need to be capable of?
There was nothing. I'll tell you exactly what happened. I was training a lot. I'd done a lot of other martial arts. I loved jiu-jitsu. I was in there all the time training hard. And I remember, I don't know if it was on the same day or a couple days before, we had learned a choke from the guard where you kind of like wrap one arm, isolate it, grab the collar and go for a collar choke with the arm trap. I was rolling with a blue belt, got him to tap with that. I didn't think anything of it, rolled like 5 more rounds. And at the end of class, we're bowing out. Luis came out and he shook my hand and pulled a blue belt out of his jacket, which was hidden, and said, congratulations. That was it.
Cool.
There's no tests or anything.
Sure.
They're watching you every day. They know.
Just felt you had achieved what do you think a good blue belt should be capable of?
So for me now, and I get this question a lot because I don't have a school, but I have a lot of schools under me, so I'm kind of like a consultant to guys who run schools. And
puppet master.
Yes. And I really believe that blue belt for me is, if I don't care so much about winning and losing, if I watch someone go through white belt and learn jiu-jitsu, and at the end of a certain amount of time, and like if they're training every day and they're like complete geniuses and stuff, I mean, it can be less than a year, and if they're not, it can be two, maybe never, but maybe a couple years.
Sure.
And I have no problem with someone never getting a black belt. I think everyone's capable of it, physically, but not everyone's capable of it in terms of their schedule or their dedication or whatever. So I have no problem if someone's like, hey coach, I've been here 15 years, why am I not? I was like, because you're not a black belt. Like, I know that's not a good answer for them. Why am I not a black belt? Well, because you're not a black belt. I mean, that's the only answer I can give them. And if they ask me for specifics, I would give them specifics. But
because you suck, Ted. That's why.
So when I watch a white belt developing, and I see that he or she is using jiu-jitsu in every situation. So they can win and they can lose. And that's not as important as like when they're losing. Someone gets on their back, or are they trying to address that problem with jiu-jitsu, or are they still panicking? Does that make sense? Like they have a technical response to every problem, and they attempt to implement that response, whether they fail because someone's 50 pounds heavier than them.
Sounds just as much a mental, spiritual,
like
emotional.
an attitude. What is their attitude towards jiu-jitsu? Yeah, because you're gonna have like a 55-year-old doctor train with a 22-year-old, guy who's basically training twice a day because he wants to be a pro athlete in jiu-jitsu, and it's like the guy, he's not gonna win. I don't care if he wins. He's not supposed to win. If this guy's a white belt and I'm looking at it for blue belt, and this 22-year-old's a purple belt, been training 6 years, it's impossible for him to win. Jiu-jitsu would be weird if he could win,
It'd be bullshit.
Right. Yeah, it'd be total bullshit. Yeah. So, but is this guy, does he understand the trouble he's in? And is he attempting a jiu-jitsu answer for his problems? And then that's a blue belt to me. Because before you get a blue belt, you don't even know the answer.
Yeah.
Like you're just like, either if you're big, you get out of it with strength. If you're small, you just get smashed. And you could be winning every fight if like you're an ex-football player and you're 250 pounds and you're fighting a bunch of people who are like 180 and not winning, but like they can't tap me even on a white belt. That's like, that means nothing to me.
Yeah. My guy Z Durham, who's a black belt, special forces guy, he coined, maybe he didn't coin the phrase, but I taken it from him, exposure equals composure. So it's like a big part of our curriculum. The more you're exposed to a thing with the correct training and mindset, the more composure you develop.
Totally agree.
So I think that kind of exactly what I'm hearing from you is this person. I think even for myself, just understanding, okay, this hurts, but I'm not going to die. See if I can wiggle out of it, tap, or this does hurt, or I know I'm just going to tap. But you don't know that till you show up and get your ass beat
100%.
Hundreds of times to have that like mental database of what's possible with your body, your physique, your endurance, all that stuff.
And so then the coach's responsibility, I totally agree with you, but the coach's responsibility is to make sure that exposure is gradual and rational, and it's like always pushing their limits but not overwhelming them.
Just beating
especially
them to death.
Physically, you can overtrain. The easiest thing to do is just make someone tired, make someone throw up, and make someone hurt someone. I mean that doesn't help anybody. I mean I tell my guys all the time, like weightlifting, it's like you're going to start with a PVC pipe, then you're going to go to a bar, then you're going to put on 5, then 10, and then 25.
Developing form and things of that nature.
So like it does. No one, if you think about weightlifting, I just finished a breathing certification with Belisa Ranich, Dr. Belisa Ranich, who Henry turned me on to. She does the same thing with breathing as my strength training coaches, and as I try to do with jiu-jitsu. Is like there is no reason to, and many reasons not to load an imperfect system. Like imperfect mechanics can't be loaded. You know what I mean? You
pontificate on that a little bit more for the listener.
Until you get perfect form without resistance. Breathing mechanics, weightlifting mechanics, jiu-jitsu mechanics. Until your mechanics are perfect with zero resistance, zero load, zero stress, physical or psychological, you can't load that. You can't increase.
So if I can't juggle 3 balls, don't try to juggle chainsaws on a unicycle on a tightrope.
Pretty much.
Yeah. While smoking a joint.
Pretty much. But the miracle is people can do that because they built up to it.
Sure. They figured out how to juggle.
They went from 3 balls to 4 balls, not 3 balls to chainsaws. But incremental resistance increases.
I dig it. So you're a blue belt. You're down in California with Todd Fox back in that time, and Henry and a bunch of other cool dudes, and you said, screw this, I'm out of here.
It wasn't that easy. It was really hard to leave. I had to make a choice of whether I was going to be a professional martial artist or a professional student. And I love martial arts, but at that point in my life, in my 20s, I was like, no, my primary mission is to study, right? So,
what do you think would have happened if you stayed there?
Just like Henry, look at Henry. It's awesome what he's been able to do. He was there. We started around the same time. We've tried to do the math, and one of us may have been a few months before the other, but we were there about the same time. Yeah, I mean, Henry's jiu-jitsu is the best that I've ever seen.
Yeah?
He was.
So if I had $1,000 to put on you two in a street brawl, I'd need to put it on Henry? Is that what you
Street
just told me?
brawl?
Yeah.
Well, I might bring a gun or a bat or something. But street jiu-jitsu brawl, I think, put your money on Henry. Yeah. No, I mean, he's got, yeah, I mean.
So really, you just said it, you think his is the best jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, for me, for my purposes, I wouldn't train with him.
That's a high honor.
And he wouldn't want to train me, and I wouldn't want to train with him if I was trying to, win an IBJJF tournament and things like that. But in terms of jiu-jitsu as a martial art, in terms of jiu-jitsu, regardless of weight classes, in other words, that's based on efficiency, because I'm a medium-sized person. I'm not medium-large, and I'm certainly not large.
Goldilocks.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've trained in Brazil a few
And that's
times.
why Dan found him.
Yep,
Dan.
yeah.
And
They had all the SPG guys, Matt and
I just got back from
Matt
my
and Travis.
7th or 8th seminar with him. We just traveled across the country. So yeah.
So it's it's a personal thing. It's subjective. Other people might not agree with me. I'm fine with that. It's just me. But I've trained with a lot of famous guys, and I've trained in Japan and Brazil and all over America. And I think his material itself I like the most, and he, so that's probably 2/3 of it. Like the material has to be good, and then 1/3 is like Henry's a great guy.
That's high marks.
It'd be hard to train with a guy who's like, oh, his material's the best, but he's a dick, and I don't like the way he treats his students, or I'm afraid he's going to hurt me, or any of that.
Right.
But he's also super cool, so it works out well. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Yeah.
So you left there. Where'd you go?
So I went to Boston, and I was at that point I was still thinking about law school, but I wanted to.
Because the world needs more lawyers.
But actually I was like much more leaning toward doing a PhD in Korean literature. So
Wow.
yeah.
I mean, that's cool, but I'm just like thinking of the gulf between go to law school.
Yeah.
Korean literature.
It's really quick money
You're like,
versus no.
All right, so I can either go to law school.
No, so it's funny you ask that. A lot of my friends don't believe me, but I'm from Northern California, which is like pot capital of America, and I never smoked pot. It was around me from the time I was like in 6th grade. I remember.
You just ate it.
No, it didn't really. Pot was never my thing.
Yeah, me neither.
So no, it wasn't that. It was just that I felt like, man, I'm learning a lot at Rickson's, but my life right now is more towards academics, and so.
What school did you go to in Boston?
I went to Harvard.
Guy's a dummy.
Yeah.
Why'd you say it like that? Why would you not be proud to say I went to Harvard? Come on.
It's a good school, but honestly, I think like they're the top 10 or 20 schools in America, I think, are pretty much the same.
Really?
Yeah.
So as
you get lucky with really good individual professors or really good individual like peers, but man, if you're at Harvard or you're at Stanford or you're at places like that, I mean, I'm sure you can get down to like the top 100 or something. There's going to be a huge qualitative difference.
I like how humble you are about that, and that you didn't try to, like, I barely graduated from like 4th grade. So when some guy's like, oh, I went to Harvard to study Korean literature, which is cool because it served you well.
Yes. And my only choices were Hawaii had a program, Harvard, and LA. Middle of my application process, my person who would have been my advisor in Hawaii passed away.
Oh, wow.
So I just let my application, I put in 3 applications, let the Hawaii application die. I just didn't follow up with their additional materials. I got into LA, and so that was even more tempting because I could have done both. I really could have kept studying and kept training, but I just felt like I had to kind of choose. Now I can do both. I mean, I'm older and more mature, but at that age, I felt like if I stayed in LA, I'd probably just be at Rickson's all the time.
But that was a pretty mature thing to rationalize at that age too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a...
And it did serve me well. I mean, it did. I mean, professionally, it's allowed me to not have to rely on jiu-jitsu for my livelihood, which allows me, I think, to be more objective and more picky about who I teach, and not running a school where it's like, oh man, I don't have enough students. I don't like you, but I need your money. So it's good to have a day job.
That's cool.
And do jiu-jitsu for the love of it.
Had you spent any time in New England before that?
Never.
So from going from Northern California to the birthplace of America.
I almost quit.
Really?
Yeah.
Because it's cold and
Weather's cold. People are cold.
people are cold.
Yeah. Well, not quit my studies, but like maybe I should have gone to LA.
Gone back and switched schools.
I had a really good teacher, like one of my Korean literature teachers. She's a Korean woman. She's back in Korea now. She didn't stay there either, but I was saying how much I hated it, and she's like, okay, I know, I don't like it here either. She quit later too, and she's like, it was really good advice. She said, but if you leave, you can leave, but everything you say negative about this place, people are just going to, oh, sour grapes, you couldn't hack it, you probably flunked out, And she's like, but if you graduate, you can say whatever the hell you want. And I said, yeah, you're right. So
you
stayed there like 8 years.
I do love the history in that area.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Were you in a fraternity?
Nope.
No.
And my daughter was born back there, so like I have a lot of residual affection for the area. It's like my primary jiu-jitsu instructor's back there. I have a lot of friends back there from that time, but I would never want to live there. No. And we went back. So my daughter was born there. She spent her first year there, so she had no memories. So we went back, my first sabbatical, 8 years ago, we went and stayed there. So I was at Harvard for a year and got to show my daughter, this is where you were born, this is the house we lived in.
That's cool.
So you're like, it's not a memory, but it's like the next best thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What'd you do next? Because that's like a little blip, graduating from one of the most prestigious universities on the planet.
I burned out pretty bad.
How so?
Just like the 8 years of like really super intense work, and it's like I don't regret it. But at the time I when I was getting ready to graduate, I was pretty sure that I was just going to graduate and open a martial arts academy, jiu-jitsu academy. So
wait a second. So you force yourself through 8 years of one of the most prestigious schools in the world to then go.
Yes. I'm not really motivated by money. So I thought, first of all, we were talking about this out in the hallway, but I didn't want to quit. I don't think that's a good habit. It gets habit forming. Quitting does. And so about 2 years from graduation, I was pretty sure like I'm not going to use this degree, not directly at least. I'm going to have a jiu-jitsu academy, but I started it, so I'll finish it. So I finished it, and then I gave away all my books to my friends and like just gave away everything and moved to California, moved to Chico, California, and had an academy there.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, for a year. But sure enough, and this is when I got affiliated with SBG because Matt.
What was your rank then?
I was a first degree black belt.
Okay, so by then you were.
I got my black belt in 2002, and I graduated from Harvard in 2003 and moved back to California. So Matt, the president, founder of SBG, had come out to do a seminar with Steve Whittier, who's now SBG East Coast, and Steve invited me to join. Matt and I hit it off, and I told him what my plans were. I was moving to Chico, and he said, my dad lives in Chico. I get down there all the time. And I said, okay, great. So I had Matt down for a seminar. He invited me up for a camp, and I wasn't SBG at this time. I just liked Matt. And not Matt, because Matt's a very quiet guy, and I'm not quite as quiet as Matt, but I'm also a little bit quiet, and I'm not the type of person to invite myself to a party, and like someone comes up to me, another guy in the organization, he's like, why aren't you SBG? And I said, what do you mean? Because I'm not. Well, do you want to be? I said, yeah. Well, why aren't you? And I said, I don't invite myself into an organization. Like if Matt didn't say anything, Matt wants you, Matt's just quiet, Matt wants you, Matt's wondering why you're not. So it was like, this go-between. And so I'm like, well, yeah, of course. And so then I've been SBG since 2003, but then I really hated the business of martial arts. It was so obvious to me, the value, physical and psychological, the value of jiu-jitsu, that trying to convince these people, oh, yeah, I don't have any money, and it's like they got their new iPhone and their new car.
It's a little bit like running a church.
Is it?
I mean, in the sense of like you have something that you feel personally
Right.
is going to better them,
Right.
and it's something that is so valuable that you would give it to them for free if you could, right? But you still have to keep the lights on.
Right.
And
So, and these guys were telling me this, and Chico's a college town, it's a party town. And, they're telling me this, and then it's like I see them out on the weekend, they're dropping $100 a night on beer. I don't have any money for jujitsu, and so after a while, it gets tiring.
What you should have done is got a kegerator at the gym. Well, have I told you about the beer fridge at our gym?
No. Awesome. Yeah. So I and then just everything. I mean, like I said, both my brothers run small businesses. Most of my friends run small businesses. I mean, through SBG and other jujitsu guys. I'm just not built for it,
Can you comment a little bit about, so before you talked about the trouble of getting these people to show up and pay their dues and all that, you said you understand that there's this, I forgot the exact words that you used, but basically there's these huge benefits.
Yeah. No, I would tell them it's like, your new iPhone, your new car, and your beer bill tell me that you can't afford this, right? And it's just like almost nobody who does jujitsu for any significant amount of time, like really invests in it. Not just like I tried it for a week, I didn't like it. Doesn't see huge positive changes physically and psychologically.
Talk about those.
So I mean, you're with like-minded human beings doing hard shit.
That sounds horrible to so many
awesome.
people. I like it, yeah.
And also, people will be like, yeah, but I could just like run a marathon, that's hard, or I could just like do this. And they're not wrong. The difference for me though is, and I cross train, I do yoga and I lift weights, and I like all that stuff. But for me, there's two things that are different. One is, and yoga is awesome. In yoga, I
love yoga.
Yeah, you're working on your breathing, you're working on your balance, you're working on your strength. Yoga is hard. Real yoga is hard, but you're alone.
It's not a team sport.
You're alone.
Yeah, it's you and your brain.
And so it's still, I think, easier and less meaningful than having an opponent in front of you. And I don't mean someone who's trying to kill you. I mean someone who's trying to test you and challenge you and develop you. Every day, like your friends in the gym aren't trying to hurt you, but they're also not trying to let you do anything.
They're trying to draw your truth out.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. And so and then at the end of yoga, or at the end of running, it's like, oh, my endurance is a little better, and my flexibility is a little better, and my balance is a little better. But there's no real skill. Like there are attributes, the attribute of endurance or strength or flexibility, but there's no skill. Like in jiu-jitsu, you're actually learning to control another human being who doesn't want to be controlled. And a violent person who wants to control you in some way. And you're like, no, I won't be controlled. You will be the one on the ground begging me to stop.
Begging.
If they're awake.
Mm-hmm. If they're awake.
Otherwise,
is this a date? Is that what we're talking about right now?
Date with destiny, maybe. No, I mean, that's what it is, really. It's like and if you can't, and you can't always do that. If you're a 130-pound man or woman, and someone's 250 pounds, maybe you don't get to pick them up and drop them on their head like you would if you were the same size. But you can, you can't. I mean, there are no guarantees.
I think what you're talking about is the truth of what martial arts really are. I'm not preaching to you. I'm just talking. And I think in my experience of meeting people across the country, this is the stuff people don't talk about that often. Because anybody can learn to throw a punch or double leg somebody, but like the reason Bruce Lee or anybody that studies a martial art long enough and they begin to think about spiritual things or things like yoga, like why the hell is John Frankl doing yoga? Because that's the next expression of your body, and not that maybe you've done it for your whole life, but just in general, people don't. I started to make a statement like you stopped yourself from, not everybody, but I think broadly we just look at the mechanical stuff. And then you just get a fight gym with a bunch of sweaty boxing gloves in the corner and broke kids with trying to get on a fight card.
But I do think the order of operations is important. I think you have to start with physical skill so that you can be honest about your spiritual development. If you start with a bunch of spiritual stuff, and I'm not talking about outside of martial arts, like going to church is a different thing. I'm saying inside of martial arts. If you begin with all kinds of philosophy and all kinds of pseudo-spiritual stuff, it's basically to camouflage the fact that you can't fight.
Right. Which is what yoga is.
But yoga doesn't pretend.
But I'm saying, but that's what it is, though. It is this expression of the body without any violence because I don't need to, because I just love you, man. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like it is that. It's just come to this from just the spiritual side. Even if you can't bend over, it's okay. There's nothing, because you can't do it wrong. You know what I mean?
I like that part of yoga.
I do too. But that's like.
But that's why yoga is what I cross train in. It's not my main discipline, right?
Mm-hmm. Drew does yoga too.
Cool. Yeah. So you have to, if you don't want to do martial arts at all, that's fine. Neither of my brothers do martial arts.
Are they older, younger?
They're both younger.
So their older brother still can beat their ass.
Yeah.
Mom, get him off of me! Damn it, John! You're almost 60. Leave him alone.
Pretty much. Yeah. It was that way. It was a war zone, but we get along well now. No, they don't do it, and I don't think any less of them. I think that one of the best things I've learned from jiu-jitsu is you have to be all the way in or all the way out, right? So, the jiu-jitsu, the basic, like, standing fighting philosophy of jiu-jitsu is I'm going to be too far away to be hurt or too close to be hurt. You sit there in the middle, right? You get hurt. And I think it's the same thing in human relationships and business relationships. Is you're not really sure, you're kind of on the fence, and you're just sitting there in the middle, and then that's where people crack you right in the teeth. It's like, if you're not into it, just be out of it. And if you're into it, be into it. So like my brother's just out of it. They don't have any fantasies about martial arts. They just don't want to do it. That's cool. But these people who are like, well, I do martial arts, but I'm really peaceful. And it's like, that should be your goal after you have Jordan Peterson said something like that, right? Like, harmless people are not good. Dangerous people who choose not to harm you are good. I'm paraphrasing. You know what I mean?
I got you.
Yeah, you don't have a choice if you're harmless.
Right.
It's not a choice. If you are very dangerous and you choose not to do something,
because you could be evil, but just have no skill at arms or ability.
Yes. So I think it should be the eventual goal of anyone who knows how to fight with or without weapons to be as peaceful as possible. And I'm sure there are exceptions, people who just kind of snap, but I think most of the people who I know who have actually done a lot of fighting, real fighting, are the ones who want to avoid it the most, because they know it's messy stuff.
I'm always amazed when you see people, especially like out in public. We've all seen like just dudes getting liquored, acting like idiots, and you can always tell somebody that's either that person's just stupid or they've never been close to somebody that's comfortable with violence.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, like you don't realize, like I know like 20 dudes that look just like that guy are pretty unassuming that will literally kill you where you stand. Like, why are you doing that? And that's I think one of the most eye-opening things. You meet like a young lady that's 20 something years old, 105 pounds, that can freaking get her arm around you and a little tiny Popeye or olive oil arm, like a rope you can't get off.
It's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
And then you're dead.
Yeah. So I think the good news is, though, like I think outside of certain professions, I mean, if you are voluntarily in law enforcement or the military, like you have chosen to be in that profession, like an MMA fighter chooses to be a fighter. They're not trying to avoid fights. They're trying to get in fights for a lot of money and win fights. And LEOs are trying to stop violence so we don't have to as civilians and things like that. But outside of that, whatever, the other 90 some odd percent, like how many fights have I been in personally that were absolutely unavoidable? absolutely 100% unavoidable. I don't know if I've been in one, maybe one or two.
All of them you had a way to get out, but you allowed yourself to get in because you wanted to.
I don't regret it, but I'm just being honest with myself. Like, unless you're being mugged, usually it's like ego, right? So it's, oh man, sorry, yeah. Let me buy you a
What'd
beer.
you say?
No, nothing. Sorry, I was talking to my friend.
Yeah, you said something.
I promise. Can I buy you a beer? It's misunderstanding.
I'm gonna shove that beer up your ass.
Right, yeah.
I heard you went to Harvard, frat boy.
Yep, and I'd be like, I'm leaving, sorry, and it's a misunderstanding. Now, if no one touches me, I can leave. If they if no one
you gonna beat me
puts
up over that?
No, let me
I got 3 cameras on him.
Let me rephrase, but I didn't sign a waiver.
You did by walking down the stairs. It says anybody down here, I can do whatever I want to on film.
What I meant to say was, if they are not physically restraining me and preventing me from leaving the bar, party,
blocking the door,
restaurant, whatever, then the fight's avoidable. Their hands are already on me. Well, it's jiu-jitsu anyway. We're not squaring off from like 10 feet away doing this Bruce Lee thing. Mm-hmm. Their hands are on me. They're grabbing me. They're not letting me walk out the door. Well, jiu-jitsu,
I like it.
Yeah.
You were talking a minute ago about some of the academic stuff that you've done. Is there a goal for a juxtaposition? Because most of academia, just by and large, is not into combatives. And is that, a lot of people, if you Google your name, you see, you're like one of the BJJ fanatics, whatever the name they use, like Jiu-Jitsu legend of the world, Hall of Fame, master of the universe guy. So people know who you are in academia, and if you went to Harvard, I'm sure people then knew what you were doing. Yeah. Because people were like, what the heck, John, what's your problem?
I get that from both sides.
Come to this jazz club tonight, we're going to be reading poetry, and we can get this out of your system.
I get that from both sides, which is interesting. It's just a good question. So, yeah, my friends in academia often, or even former teachers.
They're like, what's wrong with your ear?
That, yeah.
You guys might not be able to see it, but he's got a nice cauliflower ear over on this
Only
side.
on the right side, yeah. If you would just quit all that other nonsense, you could be, and the jiu-jitsu guys, if you would just, train jiu-jitsu 3 times a day and not do that stuff, you could be so good at jiu-jitsu. But my sense is that balance, it's just for me, balance is very important. Mm-hmm. And so,
that's a often overused word too, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. And
it's kind of like what's good for you though. Where's your balance?
Right, and then look at the person and say, yeah, but are you balanced? But I feel like I want, I don't think you can do like 5 or 6 things well. I just think then you're watering things down. But I'm trying to do my job very well.
As a teacher and educator?
Yeah, I do jiu-jitsu very well. And my job is very intellectual. Jiu-jitsu is very physical, although there's obviously, you can't be dumb and be good at jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. Right? There is an intellectual component and a strategic component to jiu-jitsu. And then, but neither of those create a tangible object. So art. So that's the third thing that I'm working on.
You do leather work?
Metal and leather.
Metal? What kind of metal work?
Knife making.
Knife making?
Yeah, and leather work. Yeah.
I'll show you some cool knives when we're done here.
Some.
No, I got some cool stuff.
Okay, good.
Leather.
Yeah.
So you got to express yourself.
Yeah.
Choking your students and friends isn't enough. You need to create this thing, this tangible thing.
I'm not making any money. I'm making a little money, but it's not for money. Give gifts and stuff. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm a lifelong carpenter, so
Right
I get that. There's something one of my uncles used to always say that it was good for a man's soul to look at a pile of wood become something.
I agree.
Yeah.
And a pile of metal and a pile of leather and a pile of
whatever
clay.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
I think he's absolutely correct.
Yeah, there's something even just like tilling soil.
Yeah.
Like my mom would always in the springtime, my mom's an avid gardener. We had a lot of kids, like she'd say, till the garden. And as I got a little older and I had my own money, I'd go rent a rototiller because this was like a 1/4 acre. But she'd have my brothers and I out there with shovels and pitchforks and pickaxes. But there was something to like look and see the object of your work.
You're creating something,
Yeah. I dig that. So how long have you been doing that?
I started knife making before I got married. So that would be like 25 years. And then leather came out of knife making because, I learned from my teacher how to make sheaths, and it's a very, very basic kind of leather work. Then I moved to Korea.
That's what started it, though, was I need a sheath for these knives.
For the knife. And then I got reversed in Korea because in Korea there's a lot of laws around knives.
Really?
Nothing over a certain length, and very, very strict.
So you could get in trouble by making.
Yes.
Wow. It's not to. I want to go right back to that, but people forget. Like in America, I can go to the steel mill here and I could build a knife as long as this whole building, and sharpen it to a razor's edge. And
so guns and knives in Korea are. I mean, obviously guns more so, but very, very highly regulated.
Wow.
Very difficult to own. Especially like guns, you can't own a pistol or rifle. You can own a shotgun for hunting. You have to keep it at a police station, check it out in the morning, return it in the evening. Knives, kitchen knives, of course, for cooking, and small pocket knives. But I have over some small number of inches, 4 inches or whatever. Or I mean, even if you can own it, it's like maybe owning not as bad as owning a machine gun here, but like there's a lot of government paperwork involved.
For a knife?
Yeah.
For a knife?
I mean, what they consider a sword, so like.
Okay. Interesting. So you've got kilns, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, it's in Korea. I have access. I brought a lot of my stuff over there, but I live right in the middle of Seoul, so I have to drive maybe an hour and a half to get to it. So
you got you have to plan your work.
Yes.
It's not like you're going into your workshop in your basement or backyard.
The people I sold it to, they give me access, but they and I don't share the same philosophy about safety.
Oh.
So I don't feel safe when I'm there. Like the way it's propane gas, and it's a lot of power tools, and when I'm watching them, I'm like, we could all get blown up any moment. So I don't like working with them.
So you go when they're not there?
Yeah, it's hard.
Okay. So you're probably not doing as much of the knife craft as you once were.
So, but leather's, no smoke, no propane, no hammers. The neighbors won't complain.
Sit at home with razor blades and punches.
Very quiet. Yeah, I mean, relatively quiet.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What kind of stuff do you make? Oh, that's super cool.
Dan's got a wallet like this.
Oh, wow. So this is not just, you're doing very, very detailed carving here. I don't know if, maybe Drew will get a close-up of this, but there is like inside of the reliefs here, you've got.
Kind of lean back a little bit where you were. There you go.
You can see minute detail here, like less than millimeters apart. You've got striations inside of the various. Is this a feather or a leaf?
Leaf.
What is this? Is this the actual?
That's all leather. It's just you stamp it with different tools. It's leather.
That part though, that's not like the hide. That texture is something.
Oh no! When it started, all the leather was like this. Smooth.
Okay. Oh, you even got. Let me see your inside stamp. You just also. I like that. That's nice and tight.
Yeah.
You don't sell this stuff?
I mean, I have.
Very cool.
But I don't.
How many hours to make that?
Like
if you were to sit down.
Right, I'm thinking 10.
Wow, so you'd have to get like $800 or $1,000 for that to make it.
Yeah. Maybe not 10, maybe 8. I don't know, but it's slow work. I like it. It's more like for me.
But you're buying a handmade piece
of. For me, I'm just like kind of meditating. So.
You got a wife and kids.
Wife and kid.
So in addition, and I'm sure your wife understands this. You didn't leave them out of that triad of stuff, but that was like the stuff that you.
Oh, just for me personally.
Yeah, I got it. I know you. I'm not. I'm just talking to the listeners, but like then you've got that whole side of life.
Yeah,
being a family man.
That's really cool. I mean, I'm pretty private about it, but not because I'm like, I'm offended that you're asking me about it, because it's like if people ask me, I'll tell them anything. But I don't. I'm not the one who.
Remember, you don't say anything to me.
Sorry, most things. But I'm not the one who's always trying to show you my home movies and my daughter. But you know how some people.
Yeah.
It can be a little bit. People can be a bore. They think like, my kid is so smart. My kid is so interesting. My wife is.
What a Harvard thing to say. People can be such a bore.
They can. So anyway, I don't do that. But since you asked, I've been married to the same woman for 21 plus years,
That's
and we've
cool.
been together for like 24 years, and my daughter's 19 and she's going off to UPenn in the fall. So
very cool.
It's a new adventure. She's studying art. And that's a huge part of my life. But, it's like I compartmentalize it because like we're here kind of talking about like, jiu-jitsu and
Sure. I just wanted people to understand, in addition to all of that stuff, you are a family guy. You're not just some single dude living in Korea, carving on leather.
100%.
Polishing your little 3-inch blade because it's all that it's allowed.
That's why it takes me 9 hours because I got other things to do. But, I mean, now that we're talking about it, it's like, that's super important. And I'm glad she chose to come to school in the States. She grew up in Korea. She's got 2 passports. She's got a.
So that's really home.
U.S. Oh yeah. She grew up in Korea. She went to international school from 5th grade through 12th grade, though. So she's like American curriculum, 5th grade through 12th grade. She went to Korean school through 4th grade. But she could have come to my university, but she wanted to come here, and I'm happy she's coming. I'm a little, as a dad, I'm a little bit worried about Philadelphia. Just my only daughter in a big city. But
I've got lots of friends there.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Was it hard? Like, I've got a huge family. My parents had 11 kids.
Oh, wow.
And so we get together, like, all the time for family parties and picnics and, holidays and stuff. And everybody's, for the most part, they're all in the States. But to leave and be gone from your family, I mean...
Yeah, my mom was hard to convince, but here's what happened. She's like, "You're moving to Korea." Like when I really moved there, because I was back and forth. And then once I graduated, so I had the academy for a year in California. Didn't like the business aspect of it. Sold it to a couple of my students, moved to Korea and took a job there. And I've been there since.
That was how many years ago?
2004.
Okay.
Yeah. So
17 years.
Yeah. And at first, it freaked her out a little bit. Like, you're not just going there to study, you're actually going to live there.
Move to the as far away as you can pretty much go.
But the funny thing is, like, I'm off a couple months in the winter and I'm off a couple months in the summer, and we get back to the States. So she always saw us, for a few weeks around Christmas. She saw us for a few weeks in the summer, or more, sometimes a whole month. I said, "Mom, if I was a lawyer in New York, they'd give me 2 weeks. I'd be a week with you guys, a week in Hawaii, and back to work." Like, you'd psychologically, you'd think I was in America, but you'd never see me. And then she's like, "Oh, you're right. I see you like few months a year. And that's not bad." And so, yeah.
Now the modern connection with these
if I were in Korea 12 months out of the year, it would be a lot harder too. Like, because of my job, I get to come back here and, just, hang out with my friends, my family, at least a month in the summer, at least a month in the winter, usually more like 6 weeks.
You've been traveling around. You were at some of the SPG schools.
I went Portland, Boise, Kalispell, Texas.
So you were just with Matt, then you were with Paul.
Yep.
Who runs that gym?
Jesse Brock.
Okay.
And a couple other guys. But
and then you were up in Kalispell with Travis and Kisa.
Yeah, went out to East Coast with Steve Whittier. Yeah.
And now you're up here with us in Chicagoland.
I feel blessed. I mean,
it's pretty cool life.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool life. Would you, always a crazy question, but would you change anything?
No.
No?
I mean, of course, I play this in my head all the time. But
do you?
Yeah.
All the time?
No. Okay. I like you. I like the way you check me because.
Well, I'm just wondering.
No. When I go literal, you check me.
No. I should have stayed at that gym in California.
From time to time, I'll play that game, right?
It. Like, sure.
But when I shuffle the pieces, I'm very realistic. So I'll put one piece here and be like, okay, it's like jiu-jitsu, right? It's like that goes here. That's what I want. What am I sacrificing? And I look at that and it's like, too much.
Sure. The relationship.
Yeah, that's what I want. And I just have that in a vacuum. Yeah, of course I want that. What am I sacrificing? No, I don't want that. And so it's like, no, I pretty much chose this life and I'm happy with this life.
You seem like you were pretty thoughtful about your choices. How old were you when you left the Rickson Academy?
Wow, 27 or so, 26, 27.
So not a child, but still pretty young to be thinking about big picture and all that stuff. I mean, some people at that age, you got it all dialed in, but...
I don't think I was dialed in at all. And even then, like I said, I almost quit.
What?
I mean, I did quit, and then I went back.
But when you say quit, it's not like give up. It was just quit that.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll finish it and do something else.
Yeah. Did you do really good in high school?
No.
No?
I just did enough.
So are you one of those like super intelligent guys that and maybe you won't be honest about this because of your humbleness, but are you one of those like super intelligent guys that can just do enough to get what they want out of the situation? And I mean, you were doing sports and stuff. Were you doing art in high school?
No.
Drawing or anything? Music?
No.
No?
No, I didn't do it. Just sports and academics. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You didn't answer my question.
I know. Yeah, I mean, not like.
Clearly, you're not a dummy.
Yeah, not just like some people just like look at a problem and they know the answer. Not like that. But I don't think I had to sacrifice like the rest of my life to do academics. I could manage to do 2 and now 3 things at once and still kind of maintain a certain level.
If you could go back to when you started at Harvard and study something different, what would you study if you had to?
If I had to?
Yeah, if you had to. If they said that program's not here and you have to stay at the school.
Yeah.
Say modern dance.
No.
No, not modern dance.
Like what would I have done then or what would I do now?
Knowing now, if you could go back. If we had a
geez.
time machine to take you straight back to that point.
Right.
Yeah. Do they have a knife-making program at Harvard?
No. but I did learn at Mass Art, which is across the river.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was like they had like, the normal kids study during the day and at night they had like adult education. That's where I learned it. Yeah. Geez, what would I do? I mean, this is what I like to do. I probably would have done Japanese literature or something closely related to what I'm doing.
So what the hell does that just still boggles my mind that a American kid from Surftown is teaching. I mean, that would be like, to me sitting in a class and some guy from Korea talking to me about Emerson or something.
But which happens all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, that happens a lot more than what I'm doing.
Okay.
But it is,
like, what do you as an outsider add to their culture?
That's a better question. So
now you're telling me how I should phrase my questions on my show?
That's a better question. They've all been excellent, and that's even better. Yeah, because I talk to my Korean colleagues about this, and they sometimes comment about this. It's like, I can never match my Korean colleagues for volume. Like, I read slowly in Korean, period. I'm pretty accurate. I don't make mistakes, but I have to go very slow. They're reading 3 books when I read 1 book. So I'm not, so in terms of the kind of scholarship that's just about who has the most quantity, no, I'm never gonna, that's not the field that I should be competing in. What I'm doing is seeing things that they miss. They gloss over certain things because it's so normal and commonsensical to them that it doesn't catch their eye.
So nuances that are because they grew up in that culture, it's just stuff that's not even something to focus on.
Right. And I'll see it, and because I'm an outsider, I'm like, that is super weird. Let me look into that. And then I'll write something about it. And
can you give us an example? Maybe you have something in American literature that would make sense?
So yeah, like one of the really
Since
famous...
most of us don't know anything
So
about
really
Korean.
famous example for America is, and everyone's gonna have to Google the dates, but de Tocqueville, French writer, he visited America. I want to say 19th century, at some point in the 19th century. It could have been even, no, it must have been a 19th century. So he comes to America and he tours America, and he's a Frenchman, and he writes an entire book about
I've read about this.
all the things that he finds very unique about America. And the Americans are just totally missing it because it's like, no, this is just, everyone lives like this. They've never been to France. They don't realize that it's actually different and special. So, he just sees it with a fresh set of eyes.
He talked a lot about slavery that he saw, too.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
All kinds of different things, yeah.
So that's the similarity, an outsider coming in and being able to almost help people appreciate, help the citizens or your students appreciate the stuff that they take for granted because it's always in front of them.
Right.
Makes good sense.
And sometimes it's better than they imagine, and sometimes it's worse than they imagine. In other words, sometimes they think they don't see it as a problem, and I'll frame it a different way, and they're like, oh, this is a problem. And sometimes they'll see it as like, this isn't special, and I'll frame it a certain way, like, oh, wow, this is really special. So it cuts both ways.
How old are the students?
18 to 22. Although the men have mandatory military service, so they usually leave somewhere in there and come back from like, the men might graduate more like 24, 25.
Okay. Do they, a lot of them have interest about America?
Well,
Do they see you as an oddity?
Yeah, a little bit, but at the same time, so I'm at a major research university, but inside there's many colleges inside the university. The college I'm at is an international college, so it's called Underwood International College. And so a lot of my students, even though they're Korean, will have lived in America or Europe or Australia or somewhere. So they're more comfortable with English, and they're it's not. But still, the fact that they're teaching Korean is weird to them.
That is weird. I mean, I just like thinking about me going to an American Indian reservation and talking to them about something cultural. It'd be like, who the f*** are you, man? Get out of here.
And you get that a little bit. Sure.
Yeah. But
a little pushback.
The analogy that you brought up, though, I think is very telling, and that does make good sense. It's sometimes you need somebody with different perspective, a different elevation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So we're going to train this weekend.
Yep.
You've got 2 days of training here at Alpha.
Yep.
At the academy that my coach owns. What does somebody, if they train with you, what do you bring to the table that others do not? Because you know what's interesting now? From my perspective, so here's a perspective thing, because you've immersed yourself in this your whole life. So maybe I see something you don't.
Yeah.
See that? See how I just did that?
I saw you did that.
Like, as you know, I can go on the internet now and find, like, Google rear naked choke, 100%. Right? And I can find 50,000 guys showing a pretty good rear naked choke with different nuances and of course only my academy knows this little twist where you do this instead of this, and like, what do you bring to the table?
Okay, so, and I have to think about this a lot too. Okay. So, learning from Rickson and now, connecting with Henry and so, I mean, I can't, first of all, I'm not able to, and I don't want to try to match someone like who has the last name Gracie, or someone like Henry, who basically like lived at Rickson's academy during the like prime time when Rickson was developing as a pro fighter. I can't and shouldn't really try to match them in terms of like number of techniques, variety of techniques, right? When I ask Henry a question, or you get to train with someone like Rickson, or even like Hidon and Henner, they have this huge like bag of techniques. Like, they have an answer for everything. It's like almost. What
if somebody does this? Well, here's what you do.
They're the breadth and depth is just like, whoa. So what I've tried to focus on is pattern recognition and making the techniques sort of more rational, easier to learn, easier. Because I mean, unless you're a pro athlete, or unless like Henry, you moved there when you're like 19 and lived there for 15 years, and that's all you do. You eat, sleep, and breathe jiu-jitsu. It can be hard. I mean, like jiu-jitsu is like.
So you're like the Rosetta Stone.
I try to recognize patterns and then teach jiu-jitsu in terms of fundamental movements, fundamental movement patterns, fundamental postures, because good posture can and should take care of like somewhere between 51 and 91% of your problems.
So that's actually not a statistical number.
I know.
I know you went to Harvard.
I know. That's why I gave myself 40%, give or take, margin of error.
But it's a lot.
What I meant to say is,
I know what you're
always
saying.
More than half.
Yeah,
always more than half.
So just having a correct body posture.
Well, here, we're boxing.
Okay.
And I square up to you like this.
Okay.
Is that a good posture?
No, sir.
It's a buffet for you. I can't possibly cover everything. Whereas if I kind of blade up and go here, now it's like,
now you're a narrow target.
You're not going to hit me. Like, I know I don't have to worry about my right kidney, right? I know I don't have to worry about my ribs here because you're running into my elbow. I know you're not going to catch me on the chin here. But if I'm here, so like just proper posture is already going to, I call it funneling, right? It's going to funnel you into predictable avenues, whereas here there's no funnel. It's a wave crashing on my head. I'm getting wet. A funnel is like, you got that water like a wave, and you let it into your funnel, big funnel, and it crashes in, and then here's your cup, and water goes in the cup, and you don't get wet. So, correct posture is kind of like a funnel. So you can't stop someone from trying to hurt you, but you can kind of
take them help funnel them to where you want them to be, where it's fortuitous for you.
You have gun guys on this podcast.
Sure. We call them Americans here.
You have proud, free Americans on this podcast.
Yeah, amen.
You're in your bedroom sleeping.
Go on.
And you hear someone break a window and come into your house.
About 8 of these guys have a boner right now.
I know. But here's the thing. Okay, but I won't speak for you because I don't know what you would do.
That won't happen.
I'll tell you what I would. I'll tell you what I wouldn't do. It would be bad jujitsu and bad home defense for me to grab a weapon and start walking around the house trying to hunt this person down, because it might be 3 people.
Sure.
And I might get shot in the back of the head. But I could, and I don't care about my flat screen TV or anything else, and I'm going to call 911 and I'm going to sit.
I like all that.
Behind a few heavy objects in a back corner.
Providing your daughter's not upstairs.
She's going to know immediately, and I'm going to go get her. And we're all going to be in one room. I'm going to be back here behind a bunch of shit facing the door, and and the door's going to be locked. And so you're funneled, and you're funneled, and you're funneled, and you're funneled, and then you got to come in with some force and some noise and announce yourself and take a lot of blasts in your face when you come through the door. Right? I'm not out hunting for you. And bad posture is like you're out hunting for...
In the dark,
I'm going to try to
around.
block your punches. You're going to knock me out, right? I'm in here. I'm funneling you in. And same thing with jiu-jitsu. So it's not that you can't be attacked, but you slow it down, you make it predictable, you funnel it into certain areas, so you don't have to... I don't need to cover the whole house.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. And that's actually... you can tell talking to people when they're like, no, I'm going to go search my house. It's my house. It's like, you haven't thought about this problem, man. Because like you said, you
3
don't know
guys, whatever.
8 guys, 10 guys. I do you one better. Exterior lighting, serious alarm system, video cameras.
Yeah.
Like we do all those things at home.
Of course.
Yeah, those are good things to have.
Yeah, and all of that is...
Audible alarms.
And all of that is walking out of the bar unless someone grabs you and pulls you back into the bar. Mm-hmm. And grabbing you and pulling you back into the bar in a bar fight is like someone kicking down the one door that you care about, and you're back here with a...
Now you got to go.
Yeah.
And now you rely on...
But you're ready.
Yeah.
And it's like, if they're coming through that door, they have about 6 inches on either side to move, and they're right in the middle of that door, and you're going to get them. Easy.
Here's the point that I think when I talk to people and I say that person's not training for violence, I see it at the gyms, I see it on the shooting range. That's my friend Jared Reston calls it flipping the switch. And he's been shot in the face, he's been like violently attacked as a police officer and lived through it. And he talks about being able to go from not involved in violence to immediate, I call it righteous violence, like where this thing I must do that's horrible,
no choice.
But it's going to be really bad for you. People don't train for that. My same friend Jared also says, I'll never know that I lost a fight. Like, because that's the state he's in. You will kill me.
Sure.
I'm not going to like placate and sit down and say, okay, I give up, sir. And I think most people don't train for that. Like, if that door gets kicked down or if that guy grabs me, they just go, you're going to make me mad. I'll do my moves to you. Never thinking about like what that final bottom of the funnel is.
Well, the nice thing about jiu-jitsu too is like, and this is my problem with some of the other like reality-based combatives or Krav Maga or any of that.
I was about to say if you wanted to name a few.
Yeah.
Can you look right at the camera and say that again?
Reality-based self-defense.
Such as?
Krav Maga, etc. Let's say the guy does grab my shirt and pull me back in the bar. That's all he's done. He's grabbed my shirt and pulled me back into a bar. If I poke his eye out, or kick him in the nuts, or chop him in the throat, it's like, I won the fight, he owns my house. I'm in jail.
Right, it was not a commensurate amount of force.
And jiu-jitsu allows me to end that fight just as gently or as violently as I want to.
Set him right down on the floor and his eyes open real bright.
Yeah.
Oh shit, I grabbed the wrong shirt.
Yeah.
Conversely, though, you could put that guy gently on the floor as you feel a knife enter your abdomen.
True.
So, yeah.
True. No, I mean,
because you can't control every limb.
No, 100%.
That's like, Craig Douglas. Paul's, Craig, that's the basis of his work is that in close, dirty clinch fighting. And that's something I think when people get exposed to that, they realize, man, that guy did grab me. This is the bottom of that funnel. But is there still a way I can not do this?
Oh, yeah.
Because you got no idea.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do this weekend?
So I'm leaving it a little bit up to Dan. I want to talk to him about it tonight when we go into the gym. But like this is my first, not my first. It's my second non-SBG seminar this year. Most of them are SBG, and so most of them are kind of like they see me once a year or twice a year, and so we're kind of on a schedule. And so I've been doing a seminar on what I call the Universal Sprawl, and that's one of those things where I've seen Henry and Rickson, Hito and Henner do this body mechanics, this movement pattern in all of these different situations throughout jiu-jitsu, offensively and defensively.
Sounds interesting.
And they never talk about it. They just have the bag of tricks. And if I'm good at pattern recognition, so I'll be like, okay, there it is. Seven techniques later, there it is. 4 techniques later, it is. 20 techniques later, there it is.
Have you talked about this with those guys at all?
A little bit.
And what do they say?
Henry's like, wow, yeah, I got to get better at naming stuff like you. You know?
He just said that the other day. He goes, I don't have names for anything. Because somebody's like, what do you call it? He's like, I don't know. It's a choke. Yeah. It's a choke when you're on this side.
But Henry's cool about it because here's the thing about being a professor. I feel so bad for my students, but if you're at a major research university like I am, they don't care about the students. When I got tenured, it took me 10 years to get tenure. And
saying this stuff in a public forum, is that like...
Totally fine.
Yeah, you don't...
Because I'm tenured. If I weren't tenured, it would be dangerous.
Okay.
And each university has a slightly different ratio. But my evaluation for promotion and tenure was 5% teaching, 5% service, and 90% research. Yeah, 90% research. So all they care about is that I'm writing articles, in index journals and famous journals. So I feel bad to the students because they think my primary job is to teach them, and you're like, I got shit to write to keep getting you fools to come here. I take teaching very seriously, but I'm not rewarded for it by the university. Having said that, so my writing it all has to be new material. You have to be creating knowledge. That's really what you're doing as a PhD. But
are you creating it or just codifying that? Which no,
it's creation, but that's what I was getting to. But
I'm not pushing back.
No.
I'm barely graduated fourth grade.
It's a totally good question. So what I mean is, when I say create it, what you're doing is you're reading all the other people in your field and in related fields, and agreeing or disagreeing with them in productive ways, and codifying it and synthesizing it and coming out with your own contribution.
Same thing you're doing with all these dudes' jiu-jitsu.
Right. And so it's not considered bad unless you plagiarize. And what is plagiarism? It's using their material and not citing them. So what you do
claiming it as your own.
There's a footnote. This theory is, this technique is from Henry Akins. At school, it's like, this is in Dr. So-and-so Smith's book on page 48. So you're saying, this is not mine, this is not mine, this is not mine. Here, and at the end, it's like, okay, I've taken these sources, and this is what my theory is, and this is what I'm adding to the existing knowledge. And so that's what I'm basically doing with jiu-jitsu is trying to synthesize things, streamline things that makes it a lot easier for non-professional athletes to learn, because there's so much jiu-jitsu. And if they can see that, this one movement pattern gets me out of 17 situations rather than even 17 techniques, because it's hard to remember 17 techniques. And while you're thinking about number 13, someone's punching you in the face, right? You don't want to be thinking in a fight. You want these things hardwired into your body.
Slap the wrist and walk away.
Exactly.
That's what I want. Just that one.
So yeah, I mean, you'll see it no matter what I do. It'll be Iron Pillow or Universal Sprawl. Those are what I've been doing for the last couple of years. See what Dan wants, but it's all stuff that, especially someone like Dan who's been with Henry for a long time, Dan will be like, oh yeah, I know that. Though, yeah, that, okay, I know that. But he'll never, maybe not Dan, but most people will never realize, it's all the same thing.
I can tell you this. So my coach, I've known for a decade or more. He's respectful of everybody, especially in martial arts. But he very often gives high marks to people, and he said that Mr. Frankl was good. So
I appreciate it. I mean,
not that you need anybody to stroke you. I mean, you went to Harvard.
No, but I actually, like, when he first invited me out, I was supposed to be here last year. And my wife wasn't feeling well, so I ran back.
I remember that. That's when Henry came and filled in for you. Yeah.
So it was last October. Dan and I had it all set up, and I was really thankful because, you know, Dan's used to Henry, and Henry's. I think of Henry as like the best guy I know. So that Dan wanted to bring me out here was a huge honor for me. And we had to postpone it, but we're making it happen now. Whatever, half year later, more than half year later. But yeah, I mean, I feel the same about Dan. Like, Dan's been with Henry, like, at every single seminar and every single camp and everything. So, I mean, if an hour ago I already said that I think Henry's the best, and Dan's been, like, basically with him,
years.
Yeah, and like never missing, almost never missing, you know, a chance to learn.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of private work. Too.
Right. So yeah,
it's cool. Super interesting conversation that I've had with you. It wasn't exactly how I thought it would go, which is cool because I never met you until today.
Right.
So I think it was very pleasant. Something I ask everybody that comes in here, and some people say cutesy shit, some people say very deep and meaningful stuff, but here's the simplest way I can put it. If the people that are listening never cross your path, never see you again, never hear from you again, what would you leave them with? Whatever it is.
Okay. If you want to be good at something, and because like I said, I've done like the intellectual, physical, artistic. It's always the same. Find a good teacher. Trust that teacher, right? If you don't trust your teacher, leave. But if you're there, don't be second guessing them. And, you know, just worry about today. Like, just don't, like, the students I know are going to do poor in my class at university are the ones on the first day ask me how to get an A 3 months later. The ones who I know are going to do awesome say, what do I have to do tonight before we meet tomorrow?
So kind of trust the process that the teacher that you trust has set forth.
Yeah, just worry about what you're working on today.
Shut up, kid. Do what I told you.
Then do it tomorrow, and then do it the next day. And be more process oriented and less results.
So if you want to be good at something, find a good teacher. Trust the teacher. Trust their process. And worry about or immerse yourself in. I don't like
present.
that word.
But be present. Yeah.
I dig that.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. I think. Yeah, well, this world has bombarded us now. We've done it to ourselves, where it's like, go, 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 like this kind of stuff being, I don't know if you're listening to music or if you're in silence.
No, usually music, but not always, but usually music.
But we need to.
Yeah, and it's really just the mirror image of what I just said, but for God's sake, quit looking for hacks and shortcuts. They don't
there
exist.
Isn't any.
They don't exist.
No, there isn't any.
Yeah, and shortcuts, they always take longer.
I joke around. I'm going to make a T-shirt. Shortcuts take you to Nowhereville.
Yeah, or longer.
Yeah, nowhere that's worth being.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's, like, I think longer is a better point, because rather than, like, man, if we just would have done the thing, filled the wheelbarrows up, carried the dirt wherever it needed to go, rather than sit and try to concoct ways to get the dirt over there, we would have just got the dirt over there.
And these people, and that's the thing with the jiu-jitsu, like we're talking about the information overload. People go to class for an hour and a half, and then they'll go home and watch 5 hours of YouTube videos trying to figure out why their teacher was wrong and what's a better way to do it. And it's just like, if you don't trust your teacher, leave the school. But if you trust them, get off YouTube, just train and go back and train tomorrow. And I'm not against outside study, but I think people do it for the wrong reasons. You know?
Trying to find a hack.
Yes.
Yeah, we just had a guy the other day, I do a certain thing, and he was at home reading about how to, like, get around it. And that's not even a thing. I just do this thing. It's not like I'm trying to do a thing. So he was watching all this stuff, and I'm like, that's funny. That's what you're doing at night? It's like, is like trying to figure out. And I guess we all have, like, little battles we want to fight to overcome, like something that's irritating us. And
I don't expect my students to be uncritical, but, like, ask me in class. Like, ask questions in class. Like, that's fine. That's part of class. That's part of jiu-jitsu class. That's part of literature class. But don't go home and waste 5 hours trying to figure out a shortcut.
There isn't one.
Nope.
One thing that impressed me, talking to Todd Fox actually about his time at Rickson, was how much drilling you guys would do, like hundreds of repetitions of of sit-up sweeps and arm bars and, et cetera, not just like try it 5 times and then do something else.
Or just free spar.
Yeah.
And do what you're good at and ignore your weaknesses, right? The drilling is really important. I asked Rickson once recently, I met him again a few years ago about like the ideal way to learn jiu-jitsu, because I was like trying to return to that more drilling based thing, because I like free sparring is so fun, right? It's like, yeah, let's just roll. But you wind up doing what you're good at and avoiding what you're not good at.
Such is life.
Right. And he said, well, do you mean like, how do I run a class, or what's the best way to run a class? I said, if you wanted to get good at jiu-jitsu, what's the best way to run a class? And he's like, I didn't say to run a class. I said the ratio of position sparring
taking a group of
versus
students
free sparring. No, but the ratio in a given class of position sparring versus free sparring. And he was like, oh, 100%. He's like, 100% position sparring, no free sparring. And I'm like, you do that? And he's like, oh no, I don't do that. People would quit. He's like, you got to give them a couple of rounds of free sparring at the end. It's fun. You get sweaty, your endorphins, you get to play your A game and everything. But he's like, but it doesn't really make you better at jiu-jitsu.
We do that a lot, and I know it came from Rickson to Henry, but every class is started with positional rolling like that. Like I get on top for 3 minutes, and if you get out, I get right back on top, and
that's
then switch.
super important.
Yeah, over and over and over and over and over. I counted it up the other day. I mean, it's hundreds of hours, like in the last year, that we've practiced being underneath somebody, even if you don't want to be.
But like you said, the exposure composure thing, that's totally true.
Yeah.
Because you don't want that to happen for the first time when you get punched in the face and some big guy jumps on your chest.
I tell people you can't pick your rapist.
There you go.
I mean, you can, but then they're not raping you.
Right.
Yeah. That's a creepy sex game.
Yeah.
Good thing you're tenured.
Yes.
I appreciate you here. How do people find you if they want to like learn about you, read about you, train with you? Would you come to
Google my name? I've actually never done any real video material, and then all of a sudden I have a whole DVD series coming out on the Universal Sprawl through SBGU, Straight Blast Gym University, and then another one on the Iron Pillow coming out from BJJ Fanatics. I filmed them both in the last month. I think they'll be out in the next month or two.
You come to the States twice a year.
Yeah.
Can like a gym owner
absolutely
solicit
I
you?
usually do seminars in the warmer places in the winter, and then I don't want to go to Montana in December or Boston. So like there's SPG Texas, Atlanta, Birmingham, Alabama, places like this, and in Northern California, Southern California. I'll usually do those in the winter.
So somebody could also just hook up with your schedule and come to one of the SPG gyms.
And then in the summer, I'll usually go to, say, Montana and Boston, places where it's like gnarly in the winter.
What's Thornton's main site, SPG? International.com, is that what it is?
There's a few. There's now SPG University. And if you just look up Straight Blast Gym, you're going to find all. So Straight Blast Gym will link you to individual academies, will link you to the online learning resources.
So they can find John Frankl there.
They can find me there. They can I'm pretty easy to find. I don't have any aliases like Facebook. It's just John Frankl.
Gotcha. And you're on Instagram? You don't use it?
I'm registered, but I don't use it. I guess when the DVDs come out, I should kind of get on there. Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you came. I'm looking forward to training with you.
Yeah,
we're going to see. Awesome. We're going to see what this Million Stripes is about.
Yeah, they make that one side of the belt heavy when I do the Universal Sprawl.
I like it. You guys that tuned in, I hope that you enjoyed it. If sometimes as we publish these videos, I see stupid comments like that I was being obnoxious or rude. You're right, I was. And because we're here, I can do that, and Drew can choose not to edit it. Actually, we're just trying to have fun and lighten up, because everybody can just talk about the same stupid shit. And I hope that we exposed you to some new ideas. Do check his stuff out. Tell Drew thank you. Tell somebody you love him. Don't be dickheads. And that's all we got. Visit our website, CarryTrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., CarryTrainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@CarryTrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@CarryTrainer.com or CarryTrainer.com. what are you doing in the podcast room, Steve?
I'm writing a national anthem. It's going to be at folk festivals for Gunfire Gun Oil.
Oh.
Let me tell you about Gunfire Gun Oil. Made in the USA. Gunfire Gun Oil, 100% synthetic. It's gonna last you, baby. Yeah. Gunfire Gun Oil is the best I've ever seen. It's gonna make you get everything that you've ever seen. Oh, baby, I love me some Gunfire Gun Oil. Yeah. Oh, Gunfire Gun Oil. Gunfighter.
Gonna get my lighter out. I don't have it.
It wasn't even Bob Dylan. It was like a love story.